Oh yeah, nice. Let me get my thing situated. There we go. All right, Greg.
How are you? Good to
Dude,
see you.
yeah, good to see you too, man. I'm doing quite well. I like your little spot there. That's nice.
Our little, yeah, we got a little vineyard shot in the background and the barrel. This is where we've been doing some of the virtual tastings and whatnot. So we hang out up here and just go through them. You know, it's nice to have a little barrel top to put some bottles and stuff like that. But yeah, good.
Yeah. As you know, the pro move is the stand up, and I'm not standing up right now, but the pro move is definitely a stand up when you're doing these things because you don't move as much. You're just kind of like there, and you have better posture. I say when you're doing it. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Friday, dude, I'm lazy. I'm sitting down. I got my Mexican wrestler comics that I like behind me. I'm just doing something different, I guess. So.
Nacho Libre. Yeah,
Yeah, you get it, man. Yeah. So how you been? How you been, man? I haven't seen you in a while.
good. Yeah, I know. Since probably a year ago, anyway, the tech
Yeah,
symposium.
yeah, probably back last year, right?
Um, yeah, things have been all right. You know, we just going back to the new norm, and got my my second Moderna shot a couple of days ago. So I'm kind of went through the done with that, and then went down for a day, and then I popped back and I had a little headache second day, and then I'm all good, smooth sailing. So happy to be
Yeah.
through that, just carrying forward. But
Well,
it's
congrats, man. Congrats. I can't wait till I get my second shot. So I'm stoked for that. I am what a week or so, a little over a week and a half or so. I'm halfway through my first shot, I guess you could say. So I've got the Pfizer, so I got 3 weeks. So in a
yeah,
week and a half, I get my second little poke. Can't wait.
yeah, yeah. It's nice to have it all done and wrapped up. So that's for sure. I'm waiting for
Yeah,
my now. See, I'm ahead of the curve being in the industry, and now you know you got to wait for
yeah,
them maybe another month or two. I don't know what it'll be. So
yeah. Or you could just lie and say that your family works at the winery and just get them all vaccinated. I don't know.
probably be good for the kids actually.
Yeah, I don't think anyone from Rite Aid or CDC or CVS or anybody's paying attention to this, so I think we're fine. So all good. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you've done tech a lot. We've talked to each other before, and I was talking to Kobe last night a little bit. Remember Kobe from El Lugar and Claiborne and Churchill, and we were just talking about like you're in tech you're always involved in it, and you like to show up. So we always appreciate that. So thank you. I'm sure you tech.
Yeah, yeah, tech is great. Yeah, I love it. It's pretty awesome to put a bunch of winemakers together, and then you just talk about the free for all as it is for your best or your worst or all your experiences. Yeah, I learned a lot there, so it's really cool. Very unique.
Yeah. Awesome. And there's nothing like winemakers camp, right? I mean, it's just it's just a different thing. So but I want to get into you a little bit. You've had a cool career, that's for sure. And it's funny because I think I think you and I, because I think you became winemaker at Dave's Bynum at 2010, correct?
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
years ago.
same with me, Ali. So we're job bros, I guess. But tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into Davis Bynum.
Yeah, so I'm a bit of an outsider in the industry on the whole because I came from a natural sciences background, not a winemaking background. But there's a lot of people who actually did that, and then they'd go on to like get their master's degree or something in vid or
Right.
So for me, I had that bachelor's degree in natural sciences mathematics from the University of Wyoming. My parents were from Wyoming, so we moved around. My dad was in the Air Force. We ended up in California, and I go out to college, and then I come home, and then a few years later, I move out to Sonoma County, get in the wine industry, and so that was back in 1999. So, but I don't know, about 21 years now, I guess. And my first job was at this company called Vinquery, so it's just down the road from us still, and now called an artist. And so I
No,
sold.
yeah, it's the actual Vinquery, like the lab,
Yeah,
and they have supplies and stuff as well. But that was your first job? No way. Cool.
yeah, it's so putting on the white lab coat, the goggles, and just
Yeah,
chemistry
yeah,
and stuff and all that cool stuff. Bubbling green stuff over here and bubbling red stuff over there, and whatever pipettes and all that. So it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed chemistry, biology, all the natural sciences, and all that stuff, geology, which I wish I knew a lot more about. Actually, I could use more of that in college. That's for sure. Getting into the wine industry later, but still,
yeah.
like a real passion for me. And I did that for 4 years, and I did the microbiology there as well. So that just kind of gave me a really nice base. And then I sleepless night, and next day I took my wife out to lunch. I said, I got to talk to you. I didn't sleep a week, but I was totally awake. I probably
We
crashed hard.
have talk is never good when you're talking with your wife or vice versa. Yeah.
So I said, we go out to lunch and we're sitting there, and I said, I got to leave Vinquery. I'm having the time of my life. And at this point, we didn't even have our first kid yet. So life was still fairly open. We'd bought our house, so we're in Santa Rosa, but said, I got to go work at a winery. It's just in my blood. It's what I want to do now. So I definitely swallowed the hook, line, and sinker at that point. And sure enough, one of my bosses at Vinquery, Marty Bannister, is one of the founders of Vinquery a long time ago. Really great, fantastic person all around. She hooked me up with Lisa Bishop Forbes over at Chalk Hill Winery, who's still in the area, winemaker. And so I went to Chalk Hill and worked there for 2 years, doing also the lab work, but now at a winery. So I was kind of involved in everything and in the tastings and all that. And then the position opened up here at Rodney Strong in 2005, and I jumped on it for the lab manager. So I started as lab manager 15 years ago. 2007, Rodney Strong bought Davis Bynum as the brand. And then 2010, like you say, I got the job as the winemaker. So it's been 10 years. And then I got to know Davis, just I think about a year later, maybe in 2011. So at that point, let's see, Davis passed away at the age of 92 in 2017. So I got to know him, about 6 years prior or 7 years prior, something like that.
Yeah.
And he was just a fantastic guy. I mean, this is like one of the true pioneers around here. He was my friend from a different generation. And
yeah, I mean, yeah, he really is like a true pioneer, and I definitely read about you guys' friendship, and I didn't know that he passed away at 90. He was 92.
92, yeah.
That's a good life, man. That's good. He I mean, I guess he was the first single vineyard like Russian River Pinot Noir, right? Wasn't the Davis Bynum the first winery to do the single vineyard Pinot Noir, which is it's super interesting just because that's such a thing now, right?
Yeah. And it's really the point. He just, as he would say, I think he was a real reluctant pioneer. He just was the guy who was there, and that was his thing. And I mean, his story, if you go all the way back, he was born in 1925, right? And so in 1951, when he's about 25 years old, he and a buddy were over on Spring Mountain in Napa, and they decided to just roll down into the valley and find somebody who had some grapes, buy some grapes, and make some wine. And you can see where this story is going,
Yeah.
So he and his buddy, they roll up the highway, and they must have gone by Krug, because the first person they ran into was Robert Mondavi. And Robert Mondavi was probably all of like 35 or something like that at the time. And they bought a log of like Petite Syrah. He was unloading the truck, and he bought some grapes off of him right there for like $1.80, right? And they take it back up to like Davis's buddy's house, and they squish it and ferment it and stuff. Like, they don't know what they're doing, but they fermented it. They said it tasted pretty good. So I got excited about that, went down the valley again I don't know, like a couple of weeks later, and ran into Louis Martini or sought him out or something. Anyway,
Of
so,
course. Why, of course, just all the famous people in Napa. Yeah.
and he would tell me, that was back then. You couldn't go anywhere without running into somebody who became famous, later, because there weren't that many people doing it, really. And so, I mean, as we all know, there's a whole lot of history and the convolution of things. How vines were planted so long ago. I mean, 1850s for sure. Buena Vista had vines in the ground, 1857,
Yeah.
and I mean, so it goes way back post gold rush and all that. But then you go into, I don't know, phylloxera and the decline that happened in Europe. All the people are here. The vines going everywhere. Everything was like Zinfandel back then, or called Zinfandel. And
Yeah.
Pinot was in the ground, I'm sure, up in Fountain Grove, I know, and some other areas. So I guess I'd like to say, in the modern sense of it, for sure, Davis, after all those years, and he started making wine, out of an old plumbing warehouse in Albany in '65, and then he moved up to Napa, and he bought some land. He was gonna build a winery there, where Whitehall Lane is now, but they did. The people came out of the woodwork and signed, a petition against him building a winery. So he sold that land, and as fate would have it, in late '72, he had dinner with the Allen family, who live on just over on West Side Road, a few miles from here, right next to the Rocciolis. So the Rocciolis had planted Pinot Noir in 1968, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I think they had a little patch with the Allen family as well that they farmed. So Davis was over there having dinner with them in December of '72, and they had a bottle of their homebrew on the table. So this would have been like fourth year, probably one of the first vintages, really. And it knocked him out. Yeah, and it knocked him out. He loved it, and he right there. That was the moment for him, and he decided he was make it all happen in the Russian River. So he sold his Napa and came over to the Russian River.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I heard is that Rocciola is really what kind of inspired him to do Pinot Noir in Russian River Valley, which I think is, I think Rocciola has inspired a lot of people, frankly. We've got some Rocciola cuttings at Tally, and I love them, and I've actually used our own cuttings of Rocciola and Rosemary's, and moved them over to Rincon, and I mean, it's fantastic. So sorry, continue, but I love that. I love this history that you're telling me. My geekdom is at its peak. So keep going, man.
So yeah, I mean, there's I guess a bit more to it. I mean, so that would be '72, late '72. So within a year, in fact, by Crush, the start of Crush, 1973. In fact, that's when he had turned the lights on. He turned this old hop kiln into a winery. So just kind of, pulling things together. But somehow or another, he knew somebody who was pretty high up the food chain at PG&E, the local power company. And they didn't have the power connected all the way up until like the night before they were supposed to crush. So Davis had a handshake deal with the Rocciolis to buy their fruit for $350 a ton, which was more than twice what they were getting for it previously, which was getting sold to like jug wine, I think at either Italian Swiss Colony or Fergallo. I mean, nobody knew.
Yeah, it was a thing. Yeah.
So, handshake deal as things were done back then, and $350 a ton, which must have seemed like quite an awesome thing for the Rocciolis, who, by the way, had all these, as I'm told, they had, it was just a little block, really, of Pinot. I'm told they had orchards and all kinds of other crops growing around. It's kind of somewhat of an experiment, I think, to try this out. And so, they delivered the fruit the next morning. The PG&E crew was there that night before during a big storm. They got it all hooked up. Fortunately for him, he knew whoever it was, VP over there. And I think they had some other problem. He was telling me like the roof caught on fire or something. So there was like smoke everywhere. Robert Stemler, I think, was consulting winemaker, and he was running around cursing in German. And,
Yeah.
and the Pinot arrives, the Rocchioli Pinot arrives, and just it all goes down in history like that. I mean, he made the vintage, and it was so Davis put on the label. It was fruit coming from the Rocchioli vineyard in the Russian River Valley, and so essentially that ended up becoming the first single vineyard in Pinot Noir in the Russian River in modern times. Obviously, there were other people certainly who must have made single vineyard Pinots, but just as a calling out the Russian River and the vineyard and all that.
Yeah, and so that was what, 1973 you're saying?
73, yeah.
73, yeah. That's rad, man. I love that. I love all that old history. It's I mean, we're all wine geeks and in part of this kind of California history because it's such a it's in its infancy. Let's just be honest, comparatively to all of our compatriots in Europe and whatnot. And so that's awesome. I love that. So well. Yeah. Let's get in because I've been drinking these wines for a little bit, so we should probably drink these wines even more and talk about them. So first question for you, for me, since I have the wines here, is which wine do you want to drink and talk about first?
Well, I ended up, I talk about both. I only brought the 17 Clone 23, so why don't we talk about that one? Yeah, I know we got the 18 Clone 667 too.
We've got, exactly, yeah.
How about we do the 17 Clone 23? We'll just go earliest vintage, later vintage. How about that?
Earlier vintage, so you want to do the 18 667 first?
No, the 17 Clone 23.
Oh, 17, 20, okay, older to the younger, okay.
So, yeah, just little tidbits, right? Little teasers for a crowd here. There you go.
Because we don't want to tell too much because you have a 6 seminar coming up that's going to be killer.
That'll be fun.
So we're just teasing and just people wish they could have the wine because it is delicious.
Yeah, which you can buy. Right? You buy the set for $99. It's on the Instagram, I think, or on the website. There's at the Rod and Strong shop. I think it's like a Wolpen or the Pinot Noir set, and that's where you can find it. So yeah, for $99, we normally sell them for $55 each, so a little bit of a discount. But the fun thing really is that they're just a blast to make, and both of them actually are single clone wines. So it's one of the things that we decided to do starting back in 2011. We did a 667, just one back then, and we've been doing it ever since. Although we've gone to doing 2 of them. So at our Jane's Vineyard, which is right in the heart of the Russian River Valley, so it's really in this area, this neighborhood that's called the Santa Rosa Plains. So we've taken the Russian River and kind of softly, I don't want to use the word carved it up. That's where I was going. But anyway, we've kind of put each of these neighborhoods kind of drawn them on the map with very soft boundaries anyway, other than Green Valley, which is the plain, And so right in the heart of it's the Santa Rosa Plains. And so you've kind of got this big, broad part of the valley. There are some hummocky hills that rise and go up and down. I think of them as kind of ocean waves, at least at Jane's Vineyard. That's how it happens.
Right.
You can't like a 30-foot swell, but it's just over some distance. Real gentle stuff. Bochica soils, just really nice place to grow Pinot Noir. It doesn't have that Gold Ridge soil that's known to be in the Laguna Ridge neighborhood, the Green Valley. It's much cooler there. So the Santa Rosa Plains it has really cool nights and can have really warm days. So a pretty big diurnal. But both of these clones are grown there. In fact, we have 9 different clones that are all growing right there at the vineyard. Blocks that range from acres up to about 20, and a couple of different row orientations. But when you take all these different clones, which are like different subtypes of Pinot Noir, and you grow them in the same soil, then you can really you start parsing the differences out of them a little more. And so that's kind of what we did, and we thought we'd put these in the bottle, starting back in 2011, as kind of an interesting thing for people, just to see, talking about
Totally.
geek, just going that extra step. And so I know some wineries out there call it out, and we do that. And then other people may not call it out on their bottlings, and might still be a single clone bottling. So it
Yeah.
just kind of a talking point. And I find that people who go to World of Pinot Noir, more than Cabernet, people who love Cabernet as their main wine or love whatever other varietal, they really get into the clones of the wine and the deep, like the differences in the soils and the vineyards and the sites
Yeah.
and all of it. So it's a lot of fun to do this.
No varietal talks about clones more than Pinot Noir. I think we know that there's so many clones, but there's a lot that the consumer knows, like big time, right? And I think Clone 23. What's your what do you think it is? What is it to you? Because a lot of people are not familiar with Clone 23. Our next one, 667, I think is a peanut. The people, especially the consumers that come to World Pinot Noir, IPNC, they're very stoked or knowledgeable on 667. But 23 is one that I feel like you and I will know. Are familiar with it. I've worked with it. But what is 23 to you, and where do you have theories on where that's derived from? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so clone 23 is also known as the Mariafeld clone, and it came into being up in Switzerland. So it's one of the Swiss clones that originally was taken to Switzerland from France, from Burgundy area, back in, they think like the 1400s, after some wars, all these mercenaries from Switzerland went down in Burgundy. I
It
don't know.
sounds great. It's a great movie, I think. Yeah.
If you were in Burgundy in wartime, wouldn't you just snag a couple of vines too? I don't know. I probably would. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll leave that there. That's conjecture. So they brought some vines with them evidently back up to Switzerland, and now you're talking about growing at elevation, and you're close to the sun, and maybe I don't know if the vineyards that they pulled this from were on hillsides, but it's easy to imagine they might have been, and just the different climate. And so clearly the clone came into being over the eons, over the centuries anyway, differentiated. So to me anyway, and then they sampled that, or they took the clone sometime back, I think in the 1950s, and then somewhere along the way it came to America, definitely earlier than the clone 667, one of the Dijon clones. So
Yeah.
the way that I see it anyway, it's larger clusters. I think it's got thicker skins. In my mind, I easily come to the conclusion that it got that from the environment where it was originally grown, and for all those centuries, it carries with it in all the cuttings now that have been propagated over time. So Clone 23 to me, with larger clusters, I'm thinking of a grape that's going to ripen later, simply because of yield. So whereas you might have some of these clones like 667, where you might talk about 1.5 or 2 tons per acre, or less, or more maybe, but probably not a whole lot more. With Clone 23, 3 tons per acre is not it's like you can grow that Pinot at higher tonnage, and almost like you need to keep the vine slowed down. And it makes a fine wine growing at 3 to 4, and I've even seen 5 tons per acre. And I think beyond that, probably start pushing it a little bit. But
it's about balance, right? It's about vine balance, and sometimes you have clones like that, and sites as well that you're like, yeah, you get 5 tons to the acre. You're like, oh, it must be not that good. Well, it's like, no, it actually is really good. It's about these vines need balance, and this is just what it does. And I think the fallacy is that low tons only. You'll hurt a vine if you make it too low. I mean, it's a pendulum, and every vine or clone, rootstock, site has a different pendulum, right? And so that's why I love actually that you're talking about this clone and the fact that it can give it up and have a little bit more tonnage per acre because, for Pinot producers, that's like awesome, fantastic. I get quality at 4 tons, 5 tons an acre with Pinot Noir. Sign me up. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. And it was in 2014, this clone for some years, and it was always a bit of a duckling for me. It was always something that I wanted to check into more, but man, I was so tied up with the really pretty Dijon clones that always show, floral and fruit and all these really wonderful things and complexity. I mean, that's why some of those are very famous, including 667, which we can get into in a sec. But the clone 23, so it was kind of a little bit on my back burner, and it always ripened a little bit later, having larger clusters and just more yields off the block. But 2014, I'll be darned if that wasn't the best take of Pinot that I had. And that's when my head just went like, whoa, okay, here we go. So it just showed a side to it that I hadn't quite seen before. Or maybe I was just paying more attention. I don't know what happened. It just hit. And there's only 5 acres of it. So I believe that was the only tank of it we had. And that it being the best tank in the fermenter carried all the way for the next, 6 months when I was ready to start blending. And so, of course, we put that into its own bottle for the first time. And it's been more on my radar ever since, So, and I don't know about you, Eric, but when I think of these clones, I have I've grown to have, I guess, my biases, I think that this is normal about these, but then sometimes they just show you like a different side. And so that's what happened in 14 for me with it. And from then on, it was just kind of, I don't know, I guess I perhaps started treating it a little different. I know I've pulled back on my how the bricks that I'm picking at. I'm actually paying more attention to the pHs than I ever have. Yeah. And bricks not quite as much, but in reality, well, I'm picking it a slightly lower brick and lower pH. And when it's in the tank, I'm also cautious to not do extended maceration for too long. So I used to do maybe up to 17 days on the skins, and nowadays it's probably 10 to 12 is more of an average for me. So with this clone, with thicker skins and more tannins, it's more structured. I feel like it can make a wine that it will age a lot longer, but I'm also careful to not make it really brutishly tannic, because I did have a few vintages, especially I think the earlier vintage prior to 2014, when I had a few wines of Clone 23 that came out that way,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting about, your fermentation timing, and, I think the fact of your picking timing going earlier. I mean, personally, I think that a lot of this is our weather's been what's that word, a clusterfuck for the last years. We haven't really had like a normal year. I mean, we've just been throwing some curveballs left and right, and so it's allowed us to having to focus more on pH, nailing the acid, which I always think the pH tends to be more in line with the flavor development than looking at bricks, because sometimes it's just not, you're just not getting your expected sugar that you normally would pick at, and you're able to pick earlier, and I think it's great, whatever it is to make great wine, right? And so I like that, I think essentially what you were saying is you're not doing a cookie cutter approach. You're doing what feels right, for the block, for the clone, whatever you're doing to make the best wine. And that, because I mean, we know people are just like, I pick at 24 bricks or 20 bricks. I don't care about that other shit, and so it's really nice that I love that you're on the same mental picking train as myself. So obviously I appreciate that. So I This Clone 23 is super cool. I enjoyed. I poured it for my staff before I left the winery. It's Friday. I'm not going to stay at the winery, so I came home. This is not at the winery, that's for sure. So my staff dug it. We kind of want to know more about Clone 23, which you hooked us up. So should we go into the 67 little 2018?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I can channel that one. I didn't bring that bottle with me, but yeah, we were just tasting it earlier. And
you don't have it?
And
you don't. I have it, but you don't have it.
I didn't. Well, not a bottle with me. Yeah, I think, and that somebody probably swiped the one from downstairs we were drinking earlier, but we're tasting. We were tasting for releasing and whatnot. But no, I didn't open a bottle of that. I figured one bottle will be plenty for me for tonight. But I downed that 2018 Clone 667. So for me, it's I think you're alluding to, Eric, it's a much more well-known clone, the Clone 667, as all the Dijon clones are, really. I mean, it's 113, probably less well-known on that one. We have a little bit of that as well. 114, 115, they came over, in the 80s, I think? Maybe the early 80s? I can't remember exactly. And then 667, 777 came over a little later. 667, I think, makes one of the most, I don't know, just seductively interesting Pinots in general. And it's not that Pinot can't throw you a curveball. I think Pinot can throw you a curveball more than any other variety that I've worked with. But it's a clone that can show its fruit and it can show its savory side and all these different elements. And one of the great things that I think I love about Pinot Noir, I imagine you and everybody who loves Pinot does, is just that it can show so many different things. And one of the reasons why I also think Pinot goes so well with a huge range of dishes. So the 667, 2018, by the way, for us up here, was a much cooler year. So 17 was much, much warmer, and 18 was much cooler and with a lot less rain over the growing season. So I imagine the weather patterns were somewhat similar, but I don't know for sure.
Totally. Same.
And then, so the 667 has being a Dijon clone, so coming from Dijon, it has smaller clusters and smaller yields generally, and basically, if you're growing Pinot Noir in Burgundy, you want fruit to ripen up before it gets really, really cold, right? So it helps to have smaller yields that ripen earlier. Well, we have the 667 planted on 10114 rootstock, or what's called 10114. For those of you out there who don't know, it's just, I know it's another number, but it's a different plant. So actually, that 667 is, by the way, it's 3 plants. There's the trunk is actually Sauvignon Blanc. So it's the rootstock is
a little grafted, huh?
Grafted, yeah. There's the rootstock, and then what was grafted on originally was Sauvignon Blanc. That's the trunk. Somewhere up the trunk a ways, we grafted on Pinot Noir. It's actually 3 plants there. So that Pinot, all the water and the nutrients, they're coming up. They're actually getting filtered through Sauvignon Blanc as it goes out into Pinot Noir. So anyway, hopefully that's not confusing to the people on board here, but it's still 100% Pinot Noir. What's up top is what you got. It's just that you can actually graft one onto another, and that's how that works. So that block has always amused me, I guess, a little bit for that reason. But it's a little stonier soil. There's a little more gravel in the soil. It's still that Huachica loam, though. So you still can kind of take the 2 clones, go side by side. You have a vintage difference between the 2, but it's the clone is really speaking. And the 667 is one that I have to pay attention to really early, because in that block, and the 10114 rootstock, by the way, likes to ripen early and senesce. The leaves start turning yellow really early, start dumping potassium in the berries, falling out, the leaves falling off. So by the time I get ready to pick that block, we're usually looking at a part of the vineyard that's a little extra stressed, and some of the leaves have already fallen off, and the fruit is just hanging there, versus other parts of the block that are a little greener. And so there's reasons to go into this block and, of course, divide it up and start picking certain areas versus other areas. Um, it's an interesting, exploration into what we do. There was one year, given that these rows are east-west, there was one year where I actually went in and we paid double to pick it because we picked the sunny side, one week, and then we waited maybe about 5 or 8 days to come back and pick the shaded side of the row. Given that the rows are east-west, you got a sunny side in the northern hemisphere and a shady side.
I'm
So
sure your vineyard manager hates you.
he hated that. Yeah, he gave me a call. I got a call.
Yeah, that's yeah.
I was I'm a prima donna winemaker that day. I'm gonna spend money.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you said it. I mean, because I would have. I think my vineyard manager would have told me to go do something to myself that I can't mention on here. Interesting tasting the two of these things because I think the Clone 23 is definitely more red fruit, where the 67 is more that darker fruit, that more plum up front fruit, more juicy. And it's I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit. 67's a classic Dijon clone for California Pinot, especially the high-end Pinots. It's a lot of 667, just because it's a more showy clone. I think it works really well in cooler climates, and it's cool. It's cool to see the kind of difference between these two wines. They're very different, but I think the spine in the two, the two vintages as well, I would say is there's nice, like, fresh structure in it that I think the fruit kind of carries on, like, fat to bones, so to speak, you know what I mean, or meat to bones, that I dig a lot. And these ones are great, man. These are fun wines to taste.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I agree about the 667. I've seen a range in its attributes too. The really showy, pretty aromatics. Although I see more, I like the really the brightest red fruit that I've seen, and with the floral tones I see in the 115. Also very, very popular clone for good reason. I love, it's one of my favorites. But 667, I think, has got a little dimension that the 115 doesn't, and you touched on it with the darker fruit, and also this kind of a black tea thing that happens sometimes, a really darker plum character. And this particular vintage also is a little more leathery. It's got some earth elements and some spice that's in there for me, little molasses and things like that. I mean, so it's complementary with the fruit, and it just kind of shows a pretty big range.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think the molasses and is great. A great descriptor for this one, especially on the, like, retronasal of it. I think that your 115, I think we're the same. We're very similar in our tastes, it seems like. So yeah, I mean, 115 for me is that pretty elegant red fruit clone, and it works. I like it by itself, but it adds so much. If you do a blend with say 667, a bigger Dijon clone with 115, it adds the elegance to it. It makes it light on its feet. It adds a little acid to it, and I think it's really fun to play with. So no, I agree. I 100% agree. So these ones are great, man. I really appreciate this. I just realized what time it was. We've been talking for 40 minutes. I didn't even know this.
Really? Oh, man.
Yeah, I know. We were, like, going over time. I'll do some plugs. I mean, World of Pinot Noir is going on right now, everybody. We've been doing seminars every week. I did one this Wednesday, actually, with Brewer Clifton and Eden Rift, a couple good friends. There's one last night. There's this is what we're doing. We're doing awesome virtual seminars, and Davis Bynum is doing one as well next week, right? What day are you doing yours?
The 31st, March 31st. Yeah.
Yeah, 31st. I'm off on my days. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
last week. Not
Yeah.
it's early 2 weeks from now. Yeah, or a week and a half from whatever.
Yeah, yeah. That would be fun. So talk about these two wines. So go ahead and pick them up. People out there, you're interested in it. I mean, it's a fun exploration. And I don't know, Eric. I mean, this is also it can give people an insight into, like, when you're looking at the differences in the two wines. You're also looking at the differences that people like us see when we go to blend too. And so these are just little wines on their own. I mean, we made 88 cases of one and 120 cases of the other one, I think. But I'm also making a Russian River, and other wines where I'm blending several clones together. We do a Dutton ranches, and so a few options there, and putting a few clones together to make those wines. So anyway, it can kind of tickle people in that sense too. Like, well, how much of that would you blend with that to make a wine that you might like even more? I don't know.
Yeah, no, 100%, man, 100%. And my good friend Katie Rogers working with these wines. Davis Bynum. Go to Davis Bynum. Go to Wappen to get a seminar. worldofpinotnoir.com. Just get all this. It's more fun when you have the wines and you do seminars, as we all know. And what's personally, I think the benefit of doing these virtual things is that you get a whole bottle of all these wines, and now they taste, and you're at your own house, and you can do whatever the hell you want to do.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. So definitely do that. We've got we got the auction going on now too. So go to World of Pinot Noir, hit the auction button. So many killer magnums, like magnum deals, where I'm buying magnums now because it's insane. It's insane what some of these great California, Oregon producers are putting out there. So appreciate that. Go to that website and buy some wine. We do have some questions though that we should probably get through, dude. Oh man, Katie Rogers, you just loaded us up. Well, let's be quick on these.
Okay.
What clone would you compare to 23?
What other clone would I compare to it?
Yeah.
Let's see. If you took Pomar, so if you took a Pomar clone and like did a little bit of punch and fermentation where you brought the fruit out a little bit, then I could see that.
Okay. Love it. More clone stuff. So heard that 667 and clone 23 are the cab drinkers clone of Pinot. Which do you think is most suited for a cab drinker as a getaway into Pinot?
I think clone 23 probably.
Or gateway, sorry, not a getaway. I just want to get away.
Probably clone 23, just because if you're a cab drinker and you're used to some tannins and that structure, the clone 23 generally has more of that. Now, in this sense, in these two wines, the clone 23 is also a year older, so it's had an extra year to soften up. But generally, I would say clone 23 between these two.
Yeah, but we trust you because you've had it since it was a baby. So, right,
No.
All right, last question. What is your favorite clone to grow / farm versus your favorite clone you gravitate towards drinking? I love you, Katie. You're the best, man. You're the absolute best.
Favorite clone to grow? Well, I say, both of the Swiss clones that we grow are more.
You probably like growing the clone 23 because you get a good yield and good quality on.
So, yeah, I mean, that's true. I wasn't going there, but I could see that as an answer. The 23 and the other Swiss clone called 2A,
yeah,
the Baudensville are
Baudensville, yeah.
Here because if you get a heat spell, then they can weather that. You're out there picking Dijon clones like mad, where you're letting those sit. So, favorite one to grow is probably, the 23 or the clone 2A, one of the Swiss clones. Favorite one to drink, probably, more often than not, maybe the 115 and the 667.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. Now we have a ton of 2A at Tally. That's our base.
Yeah.
At Tally, 2A, Bottomsville, and I love that clone. Then we have a million clones, but yeah, I love it. So we've gone way over our time. I don't even know how this happened, honestly. But dude, good to see you, Greg, and I'll see you next March at Wappen Tech. I'll be on your seminar. I'll be watching that seminar, but I'll see you in person, and where I think we can hug in March next year.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
But thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for sending the wines, killer wines, and it was great talking to you, dude.
Yeah, great talking with you, Eric. So I look
All
forward to
right.
seeing
Cheers. Everybody have a happy Friday. Stay safe. Be clean. Don't just come on.
you.
Be good people.
You
All
know
right.
what to
Exactly. All right. See you guys. Have a good Friday.
Cheers.